Welcome to chapter 12 of the book of Exodus, a chapter that has a lot in it. It's pretty amazing, all the things that try to get everything straight here. It's probably the first chapter of the book of Exodus that is just loaded full of things that are related to the New Testament and so forth. We'll find out as we go through, and it says the first Passover. It says, and Kyrios spoke to Moses. So now the people are leaving, but now it's a sort of a parenthetical chapter where it's relating all the things that they are to do at that time and in the future. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, so it was before they left Egypt. It's not on Mount Sinai, not the law that was given on Mount Sinai, although it was a law for the people. So it differs in that one way. It says, God says, this month is to you the beginning of Menon, of months. So this is the beginning of their year when they leave Egypt. It is to you the first, protos, a proton comes from that, the first among the months of the year. So now we have the calendar made for the Jews. Then he says, speak to all the synagogue, the synagogue, the gathering of the sons of Israel. And in the imperative, speak to them, talk to them, and saying that the 10th of this month, the first month, let each take a provaton according to the houses of the families, a provaton according to a house. Now, here's where we get it. It's a lot to learn and a lot to explain, and I hope I do a good job, but basically, the provaton is a, excuse me, oh, well, let me go back before that. We have Greek and we have English, and we have Hebrew. The Hebrew is translated into Greek, so we take it for what it is, that they knew what they were talking about when they chose these words. Now, the English is another matter because English and Greek are different, and some places in the Greek you'll have one word, it can have two or three meanings, or the opposite, one English word can have two or three Greek words. But here, the word for the provaton would be, it's a provaton. It doesn't necessarily mean it is a sheep, doesn't necessarily mean it is a goat. It could be either one. A goat or it's actually of the flock, which the sheep and the goats both have flocks. The sheep's more of a flock, a goat's more of a herd, but they're considered part of the cattle family. They're clean animals with hooves. They chew the cud. The main difference between a sheep and a goat, I read about it, find out, is that the sheep's tail goes down to the ground, or a goat's tail goes up in the air, and that's basically it. You have, of course, a lot of sheep have a lot of wool where the goats don't, so that's another big difference. But there are sheep that are short-haired that have a hair rather than wool. But I don't believe there are any goats that have wool. So those are the basic two different things, but otherwise they're almost the same, and they pretty much lived among each other and animals and so forth. And so when it's saying take of the provaton, it could be taking of these animals, of the cattle, a sheep, a cattle, according to the houses of the family. One cattle according to a house. Now, why am I separating it and not saying a sheep? Well, you can use sheep, but it will find out here why I'm decided to question that, because of what it says here. So they're to take one according to a family, according to a house. But if there should be very few in the house, so as to not be enough for the sheep, for the provaton, for the cattle, or he shall include with himself the neighbor neighboring him. According to the arithmetic, comes from that, the number of the psikon, the souls of lives, each sufficient for him to be counted for a provaton. And now, I used to go to the Greek festival in Portland, and they would sacrifice, 10 or 12, 15 provaton a day during the festival. I think they had 3 days. And so you would go there and you would want to have a dinner of a lamb. Then you would pay the price, and then they would give you a ticket. And you would be underneath, it would say like 1, 2, 3, 4, and I have 15 lambs. If you come there late, you might end up having 6. And over the loudspeaker, when they're done, one's done, they would say number 1. And 20 people would go there and get their slices, which they'd have ready, and hand it to the people. And then number 2, 3, 4, and you're always waiting for your number 6. Oh, there it is. And you go there, maybe 15, 20, I don't remember. But there wasn't a whole lot because they're not taking these big, large, the big, large sheep. They call that mutton meat. This was more of a lamb. So take one according to the family. It was like 10, maybe 15, 20, I'm not sure. But if there should be very few in the house, so as to not be enough for the provaton, he shall include with himself the neighbor neighboring him according to the number of souls. Well, I said that already. Each sufficient for him to be counted for a sheep. Okay, now here it is. It shall be to you 3, a perfect, 4 male, 5 unblemished, 6 provaton, 7 of a year old, a cattle from a year old, from the arnon and from the eriphone. There we are. From the lambs or from the kids, and the kids are, eriphone is a goat. Kids are the goat, a young kid of a goat. And the lamb is the young offspring of the sheep. But now the provaton have both. So they can take either a lamb, arnon, or they can take an eriphone, a kid. It had to be of a year old. So they're yearlings. They're not little baby lambs. Now, there's one other animal that would be into this, and that is an arneon, was number 721, which it doesn't mention here, but that's a little lamb. And when Jesus was talking to Peter at the Lake of Galilee right before his resurrection, he told Peter, "Do you love me?" and so forth, and feed my little lambs. The arneon. The only other place it was mentioned in the New Testament, which were many, is throughout the book of Revelation. He's an arneon, the little lamb. Jesus is the little lamb. It's not the same as a kid, not the same as arnon, and not the same as a provaton. So there's a big difference here, and to try to pull this together in making Jesus the sacrificial animal of the Passover is a biblical stretch. Now, I'm not saying he's not, and there are a few places where it intimates that, but you would have a hard time finding that per se because of these differences in these different animals. So Jesus is, they say the lamb. Well, it could have been a kid. Was Jesus a goat of the Passover? So the story's built around and trying to tie the Passover to Jesus and the crucifixion. You can do that. That's fine. I'm not saying that you shouldn't or you can't. I'm just saying that the Bible doesn't support that a whole lot, so you're pretty much standing on your own ideas of which you see. And we're going to go through here one of the things that is very similar to that. A couple of things, actually. So it continues here, and I'll go through those when we get to those things. So now, in 2, we had, go back up to 2. This month is to beginning of the months. It is to you, and it's the first law is of the Passover, and this is what it's all talking about here: the Pascha, and how many people. The Passover was a ritual that the Jews took and kept. And it says, and it will be to you for carefully keeping until the 14th of this month. And then they shall slay it, avto. It's interesting where another place where it talks about not breaking a bone, which it says here, not breaking the bone, it uses avtu, which is masculine. Here it's neuter. And that's in later as we get into Numbers. So like I said, I'm throwing a lot of things out here, but basically so they're to slay the provatone at towards evening. It's getting dark, and they shall take from the blood, and they shall put it upon the 2 stathmon, the doorposts, and upon the lintel of the houses in which they should eat them in them. Now, I don't think they really got to any place where they had doorposts and lintels until they got into the promised land, to the land of Canaan. Otherwise, it would have, they were living in tents, and I don't think tents had 2 doorposts and a lintel. I may be wrong on that. But they're to take the blood and to put it on the lintel on top, and the 2 doorposts which go up, and the lintel is on top. The door is there. And they shall eat the kriya. We have kriya comes from that, from meat. You shall eat the meats in this nikti, nocturnal night, roasted by fire. So they are to roast it over a fire, and unleavened breads without leaven, with bitter herbs, they shall eat. And exactly what the bitter herbs would, you can just guess. It would be some type of I'm trying to think of what would be a bitter herb. Would be a mustard green, maybe would be a bitter. And I should have found out, but this is what they would eat it with. And you shall not eat of them raw, nor being boiled in water, but roasted by fire. Head with the feet and the entrails. And I called a Jewish friend of mine up, a Messianic Jew, and he, as I was wondering if they skinned the animal and took the hide and the hair off, and then roasted the animal. But he thinks, and I kind of agree, that they probably put the whole animal on there and took it all, and then after it was cooked, stripped the meat, the hide off, and then it mentions later right here, we'll get into that. So probably the whole animal, and it says, you shall not leave anything from it into the morning, and you shall not break a bone of it. Now, the breaking of the bone was in Numbers 9:12, and it refers to that in John 19:36, along with this place here. John 19:36 uses that no bone was broken of Jesus. So here I think you could tie Jesus to this sacrificial provatone. But outside of that, a lot of this, it would be a stretch, but not necessarily. But we'll just go through all this and find out what we can. So they're not to leave of it anything. So could have burnt the hide and the wool, or whatever he had in a yearling. Didn't have very much wool, I don't think. And the things being left behind from it unto morning, you shall incinerate in fire. Now, the Passover was something that is mentioned quite a bit in the New Testament. This Passover that it's talking about right here. Jesus foretold his death 2 days before the third Passover that's mentioned in the New Testament that I feel is the third, in Matthew 26:2 and Mark 14:1. The last Passover would be the third one that Jesus went to, would be that it mentions in Matthew 26:17 to 19, Mark 14:12 to 25, and Luke 22:1 to 38. So that would be the last Passover, quite a bit in there about the last Passover. But the first Passover that mentions that Jesus went to was when he was 12 years old, and Mary and Joseph took him to Jerusalem for the Passover, and that's mentioned in Luke 2:41. And then it mentions the Passover included the unleavened breads in Luke 22:1. So it was all sort of one big holiday or a festival, if you will. I suppose that'd be a better way. And it says the day of unleavened breads of sacrificing the Passover in Luke 22:78. So they're tied together here. Now the second time that is mentioned that Jesus went to the Passover, would it be the second in the New Testament, would be in John 2:13 to 23. And that would be when the money changers were in the temple and Jesus went there and he kicked out all the money changers from the temple. And then as he left the temple, the disciples said, "Look how great this temple is," and he prophesied the destruction. So that would have been the second time. And the third time it mentions in John 6:4 that it was a time when he was up in, I think it was in Galilee, and he fed the 5,000, because it says it was at the time of the Passover. And then the fourth Passover would be the last Passover. I think I might have said third earlier because I forgot that the first one was when he was 12 years old. So the fourth one that it mentions that he was at or related to was that 6 days before it, Mary anointed Jesus' feet, and then right after that he entered into Jerusalem. And that's in John 11:55 and 12:1. And then at that time he washes the feet of the disciples in 13:1 of John. And it mentions the people not wanting to be defiled with the body, a dead body of Christ in 18:28. And then it mentions the ritual of loosening a prisoner in John 18:39. And then finally, Jesus was crucified during Passover in John 19:14. The next Passover that's mentioned is not with Christ, but it would be the fifth Passover that's mentioned, and that would be when they imprisoned Peter in Acts 12:4, and they were going to kill him, and that was during the Passover. Well, it wouldn't have been the fourth Passover because a lot of things happened in between, so it'd almost have to be a year later, I would guess. And then it mentions only other places in the New Testament about the Passover is 1 Corinthians 5:6-8, about how the leaven is related to sin, the yeast of the unleavened breads is related to sin, and how we are to get rid of the leaven as they did, and we'll find out more about that. This is more of unleavened breads, and we'll be getting more into the unleavened breads in the next chapter. Then in Hebrews, the last place is 11:28, where it relates about what's happening right here of Moses observing the Passover. So now, another thing that could possibly be with that animal, it said it was unblemished, and so people would say, well, that was sinless, as Jesus was sinless. Yes, and that you could tie that, the sinless and the bone being broken. But those are about the only two things that I can see that are tying it into the Passover. The goat and other things being a year old, not being a baby lamb, the same as it is in Revelation, separates it from that also. And so it says and continues, and thus shall you eat it, the new year, with your loins girded, and the sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. So they're standing up, eating all this food. And I went to a Passover, and then they drank wine in there. And the Passover, they had a couple of cups, and now where they added that and how that came about and so forth. Modern Passovers have that, and the evangelical Christian church that I went to, they had reenactments of the Passover, and they had an afikomen where they covered up the leaven, and all kinds of things they would relate it to the crucifixion in Christ, which is fine. But again, finding a lot of this biblical is not that easy. So you'll eat it with haste. It is the Pascha of the Lord, the Paschal Lamb. And I shall go through in the land of Egypt in this night, Nikti nocturnal, and I shall strike all the prototokon, the firstborn, in the land of Egypt, from man unto beast. Anthropo, mankind, doesn't necessarily mean could be a woman too. And among all the gods of the Egyptians I will execute judgment. I, Kyrios. And the blood shall be to you for a sign upon the houses in which you are there. And I will see the blood and shelter you, and there shall not be among you a calamity of the obliteration whenever I smite in the land of Egypt. So the putting the blood on the door, the lintel, when he goes over, he will not strike that house. Now it says, and this day shall be to you a memorial, and you shall solemnize it a holiday to the Lord unto your generations. Genias, genia, generations, transliteration. An eternal law, aeonion, you shall solemnize it. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. So now this is the day of the Passover, and then they had the sacrifice the lamb. And then after that, 7 days you shall eat azima, unleavened bread. Zima, we have number 2219. Zimi is leaven, and as I mentioned, they relate that to sin. And from the first day you shall remove a yeast from out of your houses. All whoever shall eat yeast, that soul shall be utterly destroyed from out of Israel. It shall be from the first protos imeris day until imeris tis abdomis, until the 7th day. And the first day shall be called holy. That would be the Passover. Maybe it would be the night before, I'm not sure. And the 7th day shall be also called holy. To you, all servile work shall not be done in them. So that Passover week, you're not to do any servile work, except as much as is necessary to do for every soul. This only shall be done by you, feeding your animals and so forth, I suppose. And you shall guard this commandment. For in this day I will lead your dynamin, your force. Intimates it now as a force, not just a mob or a group of people, but a force, a powerful force, almost like an army, from out of the Giz of Egyptu. And you shall appoint or make this day into your generations as an eternal nomimon law. So it's a law for forever. Now, I think it was King Josiah, they hadn't been doing it for, 100 years or a long time, till they found this law in when they were cleaning the temple. Josiah had them go clean the temple, and they brought it to him, and he found out. So they ended up having this giant Passover holiday. But apparently they weren't doing this. They got away from God. And it's commencing the 14th day of the first month. From evening you shall eat unleavened breads until the 1st and 20th day of the month, until Asperas. Vespers comes from that. the evening services in the liturgy. For 7 days a yeast shall not be found in your houses. And yeast apparently is like, from what I see, it's like in a powdered form, some sort, and exactly how they make it, where it comes from, and what it is. And they use it for making a bread rise up when they cook it. Otherwise, it doesn't rise. It just lays flat. It's like a pancake. It doesn't have yeast in it. All whosoever should eat leavened bread, that soul shall be utterly destroyed from out of the synagogues, the synagogue of Israel, among both foreigners and native born of the land. That's somebody, a foreigner that has become a Jew. That soul is to die. Or, well, utterly destroyed. Doesn't say really how that's going to be. I doubt if they killed anybody, but they probably sent them out and said, you're not a part of us anymore. Anything leavened with the leaven, yeast, you shall not eat. In every home of yours you shall eat unleavened breads. And they call them matzahs. Today they're flat crackers, and there's pita bread, which is a pocket bread. And you can put the meats of the lamb in it. Oh, it's so good. Tzatziki on top and grease. Oh, boy. Making my mouth water hungry thinking about it. The unleavened gyros. And Moses called the whole Gerusian elders of Israel. Geriatrics comes from that, of old people, stuff around, things about older people like myself. And said to them, well, going forth, take to yourself a provaton according to your kin, and sacrifice the Pascha, the Passover. But you shall take a bundle of hyssop. Isopu is a transliteration, which is a, hyssop is a plant with the leaves and so forth on it, with stalks. And having dipped it from the blood by the door, you shall place it on the lintel and upon both of the doorposts of the blood which is by the door. So they sacrifice the animal, then they put the blood in a basin and cooked it on a fire and ate it with the bitter herbs, standing up, ready to go. But they took before they left, they took the hyssop, put it in the blood, sprinkled it on the doorposts and the lintel, and took off. And you shall not go forth each of the door of his house until morning. Now, exactly that's how they are to celebrate this feast. And so you don't go forth then after you eat. All the people stay in this one house, I suppose. And the Lord will go by to strike the Egyptians, and he shall see the hemoglobin, blood upon the lintel and upon both of the doorposts. And the Lord, the Kyrios, will go by the door and will not leave off the annihilating, so as to enter into your house to strike. So he's going to continue annihilating, but not going to that house. And you shall guard this thing for the law to yourself and to your sons unto the aeonos, eternal aeonion, eon. And if you should enter into the land, Canaan, or whichever the Lord should give to you, insofar as he spoke, you shall guard this latrian. We have idolatry, it's a service of idols, latry, psychiatry, and so forth, latry. And it will be, if your sons should say to you, what is this latria? That you shall say to them, well, this is the Pascha sacrifice offering to Kyrio, as he sheltered the houses of the sons of Israel in Egypt when he struck the Egyptians, but our houses he rescued. And bowing, the people did obeisance in front of Moses. We're going to do exactly as you said, we'll do that. And going forth, the sons of Israel did as Kyrios gave charge to Moisin and Aaron, so they did. Now, the end of that parenthetical part. Now we go back into what actually happens. In verse 29, it happened in Mesusis, the middle of the Niktos, and the Lord struck all the firstborn in the land of Egypt. Kyrios struck all the prototokon in the Gi Aegyptu, from the prototoku of Pharaoh, the one sitting upon the throne, thronu, transliteration, unto the prototoku of the captive of the one in the pit, slaves, and every firstborn of beast. Now, the beast, animals. And Pharaoh rose up at night, Niktos, and all of his therapontes, therapeutics, derivative, and all the Egyptians. And there was a megali cry, a great cry in all the land of Egypt, for there was not a house in which there was not one dying in it. And Pharaoh called Moisin and Aaron at night, Niktos, and said to them, Rise up, go forth from out of my people, both you and the sons of Israel, in the imperative. Get out of here. Leave. Get up, go forth. Rise up, go forth. Proceed. Serve to the Lord your God, as you say. So now he wants them out of there for sure. And the provata, the sheep, that's plural, and your oxen of yours, in taking up, go, just as you say. Now, the provata, the flocks, or the herds, and the voas, oxen. Now, what's the difference between, what is an oxen? Oh, I found out. I learned a lot of this. You are sharing it with you. I think it's pretty exciting. It's not like I have all this knowledge. I just started, when you study and just teaching things, and you have to, try to get it all straight. You do a lot of looking up in the Wikipedia and so forth. But not apparently, an oxen is a draft animal. It can be of the bovine family. It looks exactly like a sheep or a bull, but it's used for pulling, for a draft animal, pulling a plow, or for riding, and or for doing different things. It's a draft animal of the bovine family. Sheep is not of the bovine family. It's a different family. And so anyway, the sheep and your oxen taking up, go just as you say. So they yoke up the oxen and take all the sheep and the provata, which included the sheep, we call sheep and goats, all of them. See, they didn't leave behind the goats, so they're a part of that. And bless also me. Well, okay, right now he wants that, but we'll see later when he changes his mind, as he has done in the past. Evlogisate is a verb for giving a eulogy, or we have eulogize, evlogi, eulogy, good words. And the Egyptians constrained the people with diligence to cast them from the land. So they got the people together to get them out of here as fast as we possibly can. We want them gone. For they said that we'll all die. We all shall die. And the people took their dough, not money, but the stace, which was the dough that they made the bread before the leavening. So the leavening was separate. I don't know. They kept it. I don't know how they got the leavening later, but they took the dough of their batches and put them in some type of a cloth, linen, and carried them with them, or put them on a carts, doesn't say, but it says being bound in their cloaks upon their shoulders. So here they're in this, the dough is all in some type of a cloak or a cloth and over their shoulders, and some of them are walking with all this dough. Lots of people, we'll find out. And the sons of Israel did as Moses ordered them. They're all going to get out. And they asked from the Egyptians items of argira and krisa and clothes, silver and gold. And Kyrios gave favor to his people before the Egyptians, and they furnished to them. The Egyptians gave to the Jews, and they despoiled the Egyptians, took everything. And the sons of Israel, departing from out of Ramesses unto Succoth, to the number of 600,000 footmen, the males, besides the belongings. So if there's 600,000 footmen, males, I would imagine there's another 600,000 females. And then slaves, kids, I mean, it might be well over a million people. So let's just say a million people. It's going to be more than that. And a great intermixed went up with them. I changed it from, and many intermixed went up with them. Many, instead of great and company, I scratched out many, and this will be if we do another edition. Many intermixed went up with them, and provata, and oxen, and cattle. And the cattle would have been the bovine family that they ate, and they sacrificed to the bovine family. Many exceedingly. And they baked the dough which they brought from out of Egypt, unleavened, cakes baked in hot ashes, for it was not leavened. So on their way out, and they want to eat, they made these flatbreads. Because the Egyptians cast them out, and they were not able to remain, nor to prepare for themselves provisions for themselves for the odometer, journey, the way. And the dwelling of the sons of Israel, which they dwelt in the land of Egypt, and in the land of Canaan, they and their fathers were 430 years. So how long that, I imagine he's talking about, and their fathers would have been sometime from after Abraham down to when they left, 430 years. And it came to pass after the 430 year, came forth all the Venamis, the force of the Lord, from out of the land of Egypt. They're made into an army of some sort. It is a night post to the Lord. Now, exactly what that is, I should call my friend, Jewish friend, but he's in the hospital right now, and so I have a bunch of questions to ask him about this, and I didn't get a chance to find out what the night post. It's sort of something that they did on that night, that they made a special thing for doing this, a special place and maybe ceremony somewhere, so as to lead them from out of the land of Egypt. That night itself is a post to the Lord, so as to be to all the sons of Israel and to their generations. And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, this is the law of the Pascha. Every foreigner shall not eat of it. So the foreigner, that doesn't become Jewish, proselyte. And every domestic servant, any which was brought with silver, you shall circumcise him, and then he shall eat of it. So basically, if it was uncircumcised person, a foreigner that wasn't Jewish, then he couldn't eat of it. Sojourner or hireling shall not eat of it, that is not circumcised. In one house it shall be eaten, and you shall not bring forth from out of the house of any of the meats outside, and you shall not break a bone of it. So they could have to wait until the morning, and every gathering of the sons of Israel shall do it. And if any convert should come to you, a proselyte, proselytos, proselyte, we have a proselyte would be the transliteration, but I put convert, should come forward to you and should observe the Passover to the Lord, you shall circumcise every male of his, and then he shall come forward to do it. And he will be as also the native born of the land. Every uncircumcised one shall not eat of it. Well, now it does call it here, it's of the masculine, so of it. There shall not be one law to the inhabitant and to the one coming forward to convert among you. So if he becomes a convert, then you are not to make a distinction then. And the sons of Israel did as the Lord gave charge to Moses and Aaron to them. So they did. And it came to pass in that day, the Lord led out the sons of Israel from out of the land of Egypt with their force. So, a lot in that chapter, and chapter 13 will goes more into this. We see here the sanctification of the firstborn, and then more about the Feast of Unleavened Breads. Interesting. Hope you'll join us in chapter 13, our next video seminar. Until then, God bless.